Well, hello everyone. This is Bit Pusher, and I figured out how to do something today that I think is worth sharing because this is worked out way better than what I expected, honestly. So yours truly um, grew up with Apple, um, starting with a Mac SE when I was a kid, and I even still have my middle school machine, which I recently refurbished, as anyone that's looked at my channel knows. And I still have my high school iMac. Bondi Blue as well. But something about being a retro computing guy is I'm overly nostalgic and it's hard to let go of the past. I have figured out how to make myself a little more at home. And like I said, this worked out way better than I expected. So here's what I'm working with. Work in a warehouse. I don't make the kind of money to just be able to drop $1,000 some on a newer MacBook or a Mac desktop, and I really wish I could, but I cannot. So I work with what I got. But still, this is definitely way beyond the classic Mac era. Obviously, that software wouldn't run here. But I found a way to fix this, and I'm just simply going to show it to you. That is much better. Look, the mouse is moving precisely as my finger does, and it runs smoother than it probably looks on camera. How about that? And I've got a couple of cool things on hand just to demonstrate that this is running well. Photoshop, for example. I'm a big fan of this version of Photoshop. Or some of my other favorites on board. Yay! I would still take ClarisWorks 5 or AppleWorks 6 over Microsoft Office 365, quote unquote, and anything else we got going today. Another one of my more childhood favorites. This stuff runs so well, and I was really pleasantly surprised, given that my machine's older. I've always kind of hated operating system emulation. I always felt it was a bad idea for any kind of performance, and it gets better. Notice my laptop here is not connected to Ethernet. I'm on my home Wi-Fi. And even Classilla runs online. I can also seamlessly switch between my emulator and my host OS, and I can seamlessly move files in and out of the operating system. I mean, it's instantaneous. Putting stuff in and taking stuff out. This is a shared folder that sits on my host operating system, and today the purpose of all this is to show you how I did this. I am using a fantastic emulator called SheepShaver. And the name is meant to be ridiculous, I think. There was a story about it on the website, but SheepShaver. And I absolutely love these people because they've made me very happy. Like, I use a lot of my vintage machines because there's a lot of stuff I still like to do with my classic, the operating system that I love most. And this is fantastic. I'm happy with this, so happy. But I'm going to actually go through a fresh install and show how to configure this on my Mac Mini desktop over here. I have not installed it or copied any files or done anything yet, so I will show you from scratch how this is done. Give me a sec to set up my tripod, and I will walk you through from the beginning. After this video is, after I'm done with that, then I'm going to sit and ramble for a few minutes. So you get the pleasure of bearing through that, or, you know, skip it because who gives a shit, right? Let's get to it. All right, so let's do this from the beginning then. Let me show you what I'm working with over here. So like I said, money is a big problem for me. So I'm stuck. I'm still using my mid-2011 Mac Mini. 2.3 gigahertz Core i5, 4 gigs of RAM. So this is certainly not a high-end machine. And it will do the job nicely for my purposes. I can still use, you know, all the modern stuff and be able to connect my OS9 to it. So in Safari, we will hit up emaculation.com. And you come over on the side here to SheepShaver. Now, some of its limitations are a little bit heavy duty. One, it can emulate Mac OS 7.5.2 through 9.0.4. The OS9 software that I use is runs fine here because my other machines run 9.2.2, but 9.2.2, the final build, is not required for any of the stuff I use. So if you need anything higher than 9.0.4 for any good reason, you're out of luck with SheepShaver. These folks also provide QEMU over here, which I've ran it as well, and that took a lot more time to configure. And for me, it might be my hardware. I don't know. It kind of runs like shit, so I don't care for it. And SheepShaver runs a lot better and gives me, gives me a lot more than what I expected. So once you're on this site, download the latest version, SheepShaver for OS X. Version and build histories here. His fine fellow over here seems to run this place, this forum, and he does a great job. He always attends to people's questions and keeps things in order. So I'd like to give a shout to Mr. Ronald over here. So step one, we will download SheepShaver itself. Then separately, for whatever reason they chose to do this, I don't know, you need the SheepShaver folder, which has basically everything, it has the scripts and stuff in it for SheepShaver, but are separate from the application. So how I like to set this up, the first thing you do is copy the SheepShaver app into the folder. And then I take the folder and drop it in my applications. You can put it wherever you want to, really. Now, I'm going to keep that window up for a minute. So for installing this and getting it set up, there is a instruction set on here. Set up SheepShaver for Mac OS X, because there's a certain few details that you have to deal with before this thing will even run. If you just go and click on the app, it's not going to do anything for you. So you need a Mac OS install CD. Now bear with me. How this goes is inside SheepShaver here, I am going to make a new folder that I call shared. You can call it whatever you wish. This is going to be what the folder you make wherever you want to put it on your hard drive. I just keep it inside the SheepShaver folder. Is going to be your bridge between your host operating system here and the emulated one. So you can transfer files in and out of OS9 seamlessly. And then coming over from my external hard drive here, I have some of my basics. So for starters, you will need a copy of Mac OS 9. The OS 9.0.4 image is not bootable. So I simply downloaded these from the wonderful Macintosh Garden. Okay, so come to Macintosh Garden and get the image for 9.0. Then you can get 9.0.4 thereafter. Because like I said, that one's not bootable, and that's the highest version that SheepShaver can deal with. So I got a toast image of 9 here and an ISO image of 0.4 here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that into my folder here. And normally I'm not going to copy over 9.0.4 right now. Not terribly worried about it. Some of the stuff I wanted to be ahead of the game on, stuff that I know I want. I've got Classilla and Stuff It Deluxe. A much better disk copy, HyperCard, Photoshop. In order to install Stuff It Deluxe, I needed one that was compatible first, because the built-in one wasn't recognizing any of my Stuff It files. So I had downloaded this toast image of Stuff It Expander 5.5. My copy of AppleWorks is actually on a real CD. I'll get to that later. But anyways, back into the SheepShaver folder. So to fire this up, the next thing that you need before you can start the application is a Macintosh ROM. And as far as I understand it, they're somewhat illegal to distribute. So how do you get one? Well, I can only suggest searching the net for redundant robot. That website, the guy has a SheepShaver instruction set on there that I think he can provide you the direction you need, if you know what I mean. So, anyways, you will download or extract a ROM from a working Macintosh and put it in the folder with SheepShaver. You have to rename whatever that file is exactly like this: Mac OS ROM, with a space in between each word, caps here, lowercase there, etc. Mac OS ROM. So once you have the ROM in the folder with SheepShaver and you have your install image ready to go, the next step will be to actually fire up the app. Mac OS will, of course, give you that little complaint, and then here we are. So look at my mouse inside there. It runs really bad, and you got the blinking question mark. If there is a problem with the ROM that you put in this folder, this will just immediately crash out and close. So if you're getting that, you don't have something right with that ROM. You'll need a better ROM. So if you go to the redundant robot site and follow his instructions, so to speak, you'll be up and running. So when this is open, you have to come up here to Preferences and get this puppy configured. So for starters, you add images here. You can't actually interface with a CD-ROM directly inside the emulated OS9. You can mount ISO images and toast images inside OS9, but to physically connect a CD image to OS9, like treat it like an optical drive, you got to work from in here. So we will add, you can use ISO or toast images, it'll accept either. So I'm going to add that and check that this is in fact a CD-ROM. And then next we need a hard drive. So however much space you happen to have on your drive, it's up to you. I think this will limit you at 10 gigs or something to that effect as far as that goes. But anyways, so we're going to hit create and call this disk image whatever you want. I'll just call it OS9. What size will it be? I'm going to give this a nice, just to make this video faster, we'll just go with 2000 megabytes. And then it's going to sit here for a second while it creates your image. Okay. Now, you don't want to check this box here because, again, this is not a CD-ROM. So if you do this, this will be locked and be treated as read-only. This box you don't need to fill in because the ROM is already in there. So your Unix root, this is going to be, like I said, the bridge between your host and your guest operating system. In my case, like I said, this is why I made a folder called Shared inside the SheepShaver folder, because this is the one I'm going to use. So hit open. RAM, this is sort of an unfortunate circumstance because while OS9, I think its maximum that it was capable of addressing was 2 gigs, SheepShaver can't. It's just a little bit over 1 gigabyte that it can access. So you want to put 1200. You can't, even a megabyte higher and it'll crash out the app every time you fire it up. This doesn't work, so you can not go higher than 1200. Leave this as boot formatting. Audio video. So I have mine set up on my MacBook over there to boot immediately into full screen. For now, I'm going to leave it in window. You need to change this refresh rate to dynamic. That's why the mouse cursor was moving so horribly. This will make your life a lot better. Don't even bother trying with the others. Trust me, leave it dynamic. As far as height and width goes, again, that's personal preference. Just so you can see what's going on around me, I'm only going to set this to, and we'll do a 10, I don't know, actually, we'll do an 800 by 600. Once again, once you're up and running, it's definitely recommended to use maximum. It looks fantastic. On the miscellaneous screen here, I had read in the forums about this stuff. These are enabled already. You also want to enable these 2 options. Do not enable this experimental option. This key codes file, you can download key code files from Emaculation if you have some other keyboard set up besides a standard American English proper QWERTY keyboard. So, and then these are preference. These are on your own for your setup if you wish to hook up a printer or modem. Now for Ethernet, it's going to connect to the host with Slurp, S-L-I-R-P. And whether you're on Wi-Fi or hardwired, this will get internet connectivity to the emulated Ethernet in your OS9. So once all this is done, hit save and quit. And this is going to stay put. If you try to quit this or close it, it won't do it. So it is, and it's, the instructions are in the forum even say, you know, you'll kill this by hitting Control Escape. Once that's complete, simply reopen it. There's the disk image we created, my 2 gig drive. It's not recognizable, so we'll go through, format it with OS extended. For the sake of viewing here, I might just try to there. Like I said, this is on purpose because I set it to 800 by 600. So, as you can see, it created the hard drive from that disk image we made, and this folder here that it calls Unix. See, Classilla, Photoshop, HyperCard. This is that folder inside of my SheepShaver folder. So, Control Return will switch between full screen and window, and then watch this. The performance is great. I'll just minimize that, and then let me take another file here. Let me find something else. My Prodigy wallpaper, for example. I'll drag that into the shared folder. It just copied it. And open the Unix folder here. Somewhere in the list here. There it is. Prodigy JPEG. So my Prodigy wallpaper, just like that. The transfer between the shared folders is perfectly smooth, so I'm very satisfied with that. So we will go on and install Mac OS onto our freshly formatted hard drive. I normally go through and set up all my, customize this and choose things, but for the sake of this, the install process will take a few minutes. I will go ahead and edit the video here to get through the end of this. Be right back. Okay, that only took a moment, so we're good here. So So I'll hit quit. Now, while we're still in this, this stuff isn't, the stuff you change in preferences doesn't happen live or real time. It's after you restart. So we're now going to, any ISO or toast images you put in here will mount on the OS9 desktop as an optical drive, which is what we do not want right now. So I am going to instead remove this and add one of the images I'm going to use, such as Stuff It Expander, the CD image, the toast image of that. And put that there. Now, you can't, the restart function doesn't work very well in SheepShaver. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So this popped up automatically by design in SheepShaver because the shutdown function is generally how you want to do this. If you want to restart your Mac, so to speak, you actually use shutdown and then reopen SheepShaver rather than hitting restart. It's just the way they have it set up. See how it instantly crashed out? You'll have that once in a while with this initial setup. But here we go. Now we're booting off of our freshly installed image. Let me just say one more time, I've got this kind of, the resolution like this big right now because I'm hoping it's easier to see on camera here. But just like that, there we go. Yeah, it's from when it crashed before. Look how long it took to catch up. So, anyways, I'm going to kill that noise. Love that platinum look. So anyways, here we are. Yep, everything is live and running well in OS9. I had to play with the sound a bit before it actually was working on my P book. I think after I did 9.0.4, it actually just started working. But now you know how to boot up an ISO. So this, and preferences on SheepShaver, that's where you, instead of where I added this, my Stuff It Expander CD image, you could have grabbed the 9.0.4 and do that upgrade. But anyways, yeah, so there it is. We now have a fully functional OS9 system. It's just a matter of, now that SheepShaver is configured and running, it's a matter of going in and taking the time to install your applications and lay it out the way you want it. Like I said, this runs surprisingly well. And the fact I can have it on my on-the-go laptop, and it's, you know, because I use AppleWorks a lot. It's one of my favorite office suites. I think I mentioned that. SheepShaver's design here seems to have the system believes it's a Power Macintosh 9500. And this is what's really funny to me. A Power PC G4 at 100 megahertz. I'm pretty sure there was no such thing. But regardless, graphical intensive stuff's pretty rough. I tried running Doom and Myst, and the system struggled pretty well with that. It's not, so this is not ideal for 3D games and all that. You can try it. Results may vary, but as for me, most of the stuff I like to use and toy with isn't particularly graphical intensive. Doesn't struggle with Photoshop, doesn't struggle with AppleWorks, or tinkering with HyperCard, or whatever I'm in the mood to do. So there it is. As far as switching between, now I showed you how you can drag stuff in and out. You know, you can use your shared folder here for getting stuff in and out of the emulated system. Control Return to switch between windowed and full screen mode. So in my case, I now would do this. Maximum. Oops, didn't mean to hit that. Save and quit. Shut down. I'll go ahead and pop a link to that bad boy in my bar down here. And there we are, running reasonably smoothly and legit. All that old PowerPC software now has a place again. So I hope this was helpful to somebody. Any retro computing, quote unquote, old school Mac enthusiasts. This is really cool. It's a good way to go. So now comes the fun part, me rambling. Okay, so my favorite part of the video. This is the part where you should stop watching now because I'm just going to ramble for a bit. But I want to talk about this. I want to tell a little bit of my story in the shortest possible way, of course. But I was what you'd call an OS9 holdout, or at least that's if I have the phrasing correct, because as I mentioned earlier, I grew up with Apple. I had, Macintosh since I was a child, and I'm almost 40. So, I mean, I've been around, for the entire progression of the Macintosh and of the home computing thing in general. They didn't, there was a time when people thought having computers in your home was absurd. And no one had computers. That was a thing. Apple pushed into that market with the Apple II, hit the schools, and it was big on education and all that. But I was there for every step of the way. But anyways, I was the type of kid that I couldn't be pulled away from my computer. Like my mom used to have to force me to go outside and play because I would stay inside either playing Nintendo or something or on my computer. So my clearest and most serious memories begin in middle school with that, really, because I was doing a lot with my computer for school, and which is my performa that I have a video on my channel here that I was very thrilled to rebuild that. But so I spent my life on that, and over the years you watched Mac OS, as new versions came out, it would progress and evolve. The height of that was what we have here with OS9, and there's different classes of people there. There's some that still prefer System 7 over OS 8 or 9, or some that prefer OS 8, or some that are set on specific versions of OS 9 and what have you. But for me, OS 9 was what I used to call it the last true Macintosh operating system, because when OS X was introduced, it was a rather, to me, especially by the time I had seen it, was a rather radical departure from the stuff that I was just used to my whole life and really very passionately loved with my heart. I'm a weird person, I guess, because I have emotional attachments to my machines and software and things like that. Like I feel these things. But anyways, I got my iMac my junior year and lived on that. I mean, for social things like, I had my ICQ and Instant Messenger, all my online gaming shit, and my school stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. And then a while after, that was running OS 9, of course. And then a while after high school, I had gotten this G4 from a friend that, didn't really use Apple stuff and didn't care for it. And it's only a 400 megahertz machine, but it became my next machine. So through my early adulthood, I lived on that machine pretty heavily. I had gotten into Linux and BSD for a while at a point there, and was using the GNU Step project, which I loved that because that was a open source clone to me of Steve Jobs' next OS when he had left Apple for a while. So I mean, I have a good deal of experience with that, Linux, BSD, and GNU Step. But OS9 was, I was brokenhearted when OS X came along because I didn't like it. For all of its improvements in terms of how it ran and what it was doing in the background, the different kernel and all that, I didn't like using OS X. So I didn't. I stayed in OS9 for as long as I could. I mean, as time moved on, I was able to manage a lot of my adult life with my OS9 machines, but it was just getting too far out of date. The internet was changing, the way websites were written and all that, communication protocols and everything else. So it all started to die. And I still hung on. At this point, I had multiple machines in my life, but just to hang on. But so if you're following this story, that all ties together as to why I did this, because why I have all my old Macs, and I still use OS9 any way I can because it's just where my heart is at. I'm just a Macintosh kid, and that will never ever change. But yeah, this SheepShaver thing is just terribly exciting to me because it's now allowed me to take that piece of my youth and that software I love so much, and I still have access to it on modern machines. My old Macs eventually, at some point, are probably going to die, and I'm doing everything I can to keep them alive. I keep them clean, I refurbished them, I don't know how to recap, so when capacitor time comes, I have to be investigating, local services to see if any computer shops will do it, stuff like that. Power supplies, when those things cook, I'm pretty much screwed because you're not going to find a modern working power supply for any of these old Macs. So while I have no doubt they still got plenty of years left in them, something like SheepShaver now guarantees me another big step forward in the future in terms of hardware, because I'm going from early 2000s here to like 2011. This modern version of SheepShaver right now supports Catalina, so if I were to get anything in the last ever get a MacBook that was made in the last few years, again I could move forward on that and still have OS9 at hand. So yeah, I am a die-hard Macintosh, old school Macintosh person, and SheepShaver has allowed me to have that handy and still be able to use it for the most part. I wish I could play some more of the games that I used to spend a lot of my time on, like Warcraft 2 and Quake, but in the meantime, I got my actual PowerPC machines and whatnot that can run that. But anyway, that's my rant, that's my ramble in a confused little nutshell. If you did in fact watch all this, thanks for hanging out with me, and I hope that this kind of walkthrough was helpful. But yeah, this is the original Bit Pusher. See ya.